Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore.
He told his supporters, not that they're not going to have to vote again, but that they don't have to vote this time.
My instruction, we don't need the votes. I have so many votes.
We don't need votes. I tell my people, I don't need any votes. We got all the votes we need. I don't need votes. We don't need votes. We got more votes than anybody's ever had. You don't have to vote. Don't worry about voting. The voting, we got plenty of votes.
At Rolling Stone today, they profile 70 different election officials who have been put into position in the swing states of Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, who are election denialists, committed election denialists, officials that have been put in place in all of those swing states.
This time around, there's this thing called bullet ballots, and you know, those things had me scratching my head, and I'm still not sure, you know, what's going on here. I'm trying to be skeptical and agnostic about this.
Yeah, my initial nomenclature of saying it's a bullet ballot or a drop-off vote, I was conflating them. And let me explain what the two things are. And we don't know which it is until the ballots are actually inspected. A bullet ballot is a ballot which actually exists, it's on paper, that only, hopefully on paper, that only has one selection in one race. So somebody went to the polls, said, I want a ballot. They checked off one box, turned it in, left. It's called a bullet ballot.
Right. And typically, the ones we're talking about here are people who just voted for Trump.
Correct, except that I'm increasingly thinking in a lot of cases the bullet ballot isn't there. The hack could have unfolded two ways. One, the e-poll books, which are all networked, all online, statewide, and it turns out most of them had very easy access for Mr. Musk because they're also were being backed up across Starlink.
And then he journeyed to Pennsylvania, where he spent like a month and a half campaigning for me in Pennsylvania. And he's a popular guy, and he was very effective. And he knows those computers better than anybody, all those computers, those vote-counting computers. And we ended up winning Pennsylvania like in a landslide, so it was pretty good.
Okay, there's two theories. One, toward the end of the day, they have great voter profiling on everybody. Musk had his lottery and built this list of people who had pledged to vote for Trump. They know who's actually voted because the poll book data is in front of them. So they can very accurately project what the outcome of the state was going to be. They said, we're about 30,000 votes short. Great. So you check the box on 30,000 lottery pledged Trump voters. And then, provided you have a hack in the tabulator, you add 30,000 votes in the matching precincts of those tabulators.
Yeah,
it is a pretty sophisticated attack. And I tell people, you know, they say that sounds, you know, and some people think it's nuts. But I have actually run operations larger than that, where we have infiltrated hundreds of credit card machines on behalf of the company that wants us to do so. The credit card machine is doing its proper job, just like the e-poll book and the tabulator were, but it's also sending out additional data that we are hoping is stolen by gangs, that we are tracking that data to find them. And we've done this in the numbers of hundreds. Right. So here you have a perfectly functional machine that's also doing additional and nefarious activity underneath it.
Yeah, essentially is that, you know, there might have been some hanky-panky around this election, that statistically there were more people just voting the bullet ballots, more people just voting for Trump in the swing states than not in the swing states, that there was an anomaly.
By orders of magnitude. And I presented in my letter to Ms. Harris, look, you take Arizona and Nevada, both of which have these extraordinary numbers of just Trump votes, 5.5% of his total, close to 7% of his total in one state. Right across the border from those states in Utah, Oregon, Idaho, who have the same media markets, you're bounding those states, the averages are 1/5 of 1%, 1/10 of 1%, which is the normal thing you see in a presidential election. The state of Utah, less than 1/100th of 1% of Utah voters do not fill out their whole ballot.
Wow. So what you're saying is that specifically in those two states, in Arizona and what was the other one? Nevada. We saw 5 and 7% of the ballots were people who only voted for Trump.
That is what the numbers are showing us, and all we got to do is actually do a hand recount.
Yeah. It's hard to argue with that. I mean, now on the other hand, Donald Trump and his buddies yelling for 4 years now that the 2020 election was stolen from him, have really tarnished the reputation of anybody who dares suggest that there might be something wrong with our election systems.
I get it, and you and I know. I mean, I am the one that came forward with Saxby Chambliss versus Max Cleland, and people screamed to me, "How dare you question our elections?" And then eventually we got the actual code that was inserted leaked, and then I've ever told you this, but Max Cleland eventually took me to lunch around 2007 and 2008 and apologized. He should have taken it more seriously.
Wow.
And John Kerry laughed at me in 2004. And honestly, and this is the thing, Tom, you said 2008. 2008, I didn't see anything wrong. I didn't see anything wrong in 12. I didn't see anything wrong in 16. I didn't see anything wrong in 2020. I mean, I thought Donald Trump legitimately won 2016, or at least was close. Sure, there was Russian propaganda and psychological hacking, but I didn't see anything at the electronic level. I said, that's a problem.
Right.
This is the first time that in a long time, that I look at the numbers and go, okay, these numbers are bonkers. And what set me off on the thing was, I actually live in Center County, Pennsylvania, and we were one of the places that received one of these bomb threats. And I'm like, okay, in the world of cyber security, and network security especially, if people are going to do an intrusion, they generally have it planned in advance, they have their stuff put in advance, but fairly often they'll throw a distraction in to make you look at something else.
Right.
When this wave of bomb threats came in that were being attributed to Russia, I looked at them, and this was my thought. I said, holy smoke, these are targeting tabulation and ballot collection areas that they want to break the custody chain so you can't do a recount.
Who won or who lost the election?
It's real simple. If not for vote suppression tactics, that's a fancy word for shafting people of color out of their vote, young people out of their vote, Kamala Harris would have won 3,565,000 votes. That's a number of voters that were denied the right to vote because they were purged or they were challenged or they had their provisional ballot thrown out. Let me give you some of the numbers. The reason I'm giving you numbers, and I've waited so long to make this report, is that I have to get the numbers from the government agencies, particularly something we call the Elections Assistance Commission. So people don't realize, I used to be a professor of statistics. I was a forensic economist. This is my specialty, the numbers, which I usually did for attorneys general and the U.S. Department of Justice and other government agencies. And so these are calculations I would do, and I have done for federal courts. So we had, are you ready for this? According to the Elections Assistance Commission, the official numbers, we had 4,776,706 voters purged from the voter rolls wrongly. And you'll be shocked, overwhelmingly voters of color. In Wisconsin, almost every voter removed by the purge was either a black voter in Milwaukee or a student in Madison. We had this brand new business this year of vigilante voter challenges. We talked about that on the air, where for the first time, very first time, an individual voter like Greg Palast can say, Tom Hartman does not live in Portland. He shouldn't be allowed to vote. This is new. A third of a million, 317,000 voters were challenged by the beginning of August. NAACP said it was over 200,000 just Georgia alone by election day. We had 2.12 million mail-in ballots rejected, and that wouldn't mean anything if it were random. It's not random, Tom. According to the state of Washington, which did a study, you're 400% more likely to have your mail-in ballot rejected if you're black than if you're white. And Washington state has the least voter suppression of any state in the union. We have over 500,000 votes that were spoiled. That is, they said they couldn't be read. And again, it's very, very racial. We had 1.2 million provisional ballots rejected. People think, they get this, you go in and they say, oh, you've been challenged, you've been purged, or we can't find your name on the rolls here, fill out this provisional ballot. 43% of those ballots, according to the U.S. government, 43% of provisional ballots, and there were about 4 million in the last, or about 3 million in the last election. 43% of those were thrown in the garbage. Overwhelmingly voters of color, and in fact, if you're Black, Hispanic, or Latino, or Asian American, the chance you'll be given a provisional ballot is 300% higher than if you're white. We're talking, there's some double counting here. The vote suppression factor is about 2.3%. Again, Kamala Harris would have even won the popular vote, 3.565 million extra votes. She would have won the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. These are pretty exacting calculations, Tom. And so she would have won with 286 electoral votes. Again, this is absent if we didn't have a vote suppression Jim Crow voting system. And I'm telling you, I work all over the world on elections, from Britain to Venezuela to Liberia. There's no other nation in the world, except for old apartheid South Africa, I mean, where we have a supposed democracies, where you have this racial, basically Jim Crow apartheid voting system, where you have massive, massive numbers of voters of color lose their vote. Also now, that's kind of widened out to, I found a massive number of young people. Again, that demographic is their voters of color too. The color's blue because young voters, especially young women, that are targeted for the purges, to be sent to provisional ballots, had their registrations canceled or their votes disqualified, especially their mail-in ballots. NPR found that 1 in 7 mail-in ballots in the analysis they did were thrown in the garbage. Overwhelmingly, again, by the government numbers, 400% more likely if you're Black than if you're white. We show you a clip from the 1920 film over 100 years ago, the film Birth of a Nation, where they show a white actor in blackface putting 2 ballots into a ballot box. So the accusation that Black voters vote multiple times to steal elections is an old trope. But this time it came back 100 years later with the Trump group, True the Vote. And they used that to justify these new vigilante individual challenges. Again, they proudly proclaimed 317,886 challenges by the beginning of August. And this is brand new stuff. This has not been done since the Ku Klux Klan used this personal mass challenge business in 1946. This is the Klan plan. Guessing about what color they are, we called up 800 of the challenged voters. Almost all of them were Black, and a smattering of some young white people registered as Democrats.
If you had one really violent day, like a guy like Mike Kelly, put him in charge, rough hour, and I mean real rough,